Hi, everyone. Welcome to Get More from Year 24 Architecting Coaching Clinic #1. I'm really excited to be offering this as a service to all of you in the architecting community, resources to really help you get what I call stressless success. And if you haven't met me before, my name is Angela Mazzi. I am a full-time practicing architect, so I know what it's like to be in the working world as a creative. I have my own scars from the overwhelm, stress, and burnout that can often come with creative professions. And I really know there has to be a better way. As creative people, we have so much to offer. We have a purpose, we have big dreams, and we wouldn't want those things if we weren't uniquely meant for them. So when you think about, am I crazy to think that I can, you know, serve children who need a better education or make a difference in the way that a city looks and feels or change the dynamic for a small business? There's a reason you care about that issue and not everyone else does. So what I've really made it my mission to do is to help you get rid of the roadblocks, because stressless success means that those things that are your big dreams, your purpose, are your North Star. They are the things that you get to do, that you make a priority in your life. And when you do that, you claim success on your own terms. It doesn't look like what your boss's success looks like, what your friends or your father. It is your success. And when you do that, you not only are doing work you love, but you also have quality of life. And in my work as a practicing architect, believe it or not, one of the things I study is stress. And you might say, well, why do you study stress as an architect? That seems kind of crazy, right? Well, the reason that I study stress as an architect is because what I am really interested in personally is design for well-being. So that means we have to understand what is deteriorating the well-being of the people that might be using the spaces, and therefore, how can we help them? And what I have learned is that it really is about having a lack of resources. And as I've studied this in my career, I've also been able to apply it to my professional life and the professional lives of others, to my coaching clients, in my books, in my courses. So this is something that I really feel needs to be talked about a lot more in creative professions. And definitely, we all need to set ourselves up to have more resources so that we can navigate the day better. So today we are going to talk about your #1 most valuable resource, which is your time. We only get 24 hours in a day. The human lifetime, even if you live to be 100, is actually not that long in the scheme of history, right? So if we want to make a difference, not only do we have to get a lot out of our day, but we also have to have a healthy life. Stress can kill you, stress can make you sick, and all of that is going to diminish your impact. So if you're ready, we're going to get started now talking really specifically about how to have that healthy day, how to really make sure that you have the resources that you need in order to be successful on your own terms. And I call this get more out of your daily 24. So I'm going to share some images here because I think it is important to visualize some of this stuff. So as I talk through this, I'm going to start with this idea of resources and how stress impacts our resources. Then I'm going to move into the daily 24 and how I like to think about using your time, setting priorities with your time, and then how to apply that in 4 different parts of your day so that it's easy and it's something that you'll be able to do. So first of all, when I think about resources, I kind of imagine a video game. My kids love the Mario Brothers games, and in those games, you play a character that runs through a world, and as that character navigates that world, it can collect these coins, and these coins are resources. So when the character comes up against a hazard, if the character has resources, can keep moving along and you can keep playing. If not, what happens? You lose a life. If you lose enough lives, it's game over. And this is a really good way to think about our own lives. If you have resources, you can cope. You know, if you go to get in your car and your car won't start, but you have resources, you can do something like call AAA, work from home until they come. Maybe the battery was dead, they can change the battery for you. You can pay for that and you're on your way. On the other hand, if you don't have money and you're not able to telework and you needed to get to work and your car wouldn't start and you didn't have AAA, you might risk losing your job over being absent that day. So you could see the difference in just that simple example of how resources matter. And I told you that I study stress. And this is actually coming from a paper I wrote for a peer-reviewed journal where I talked specifically about stress. So the interesting thing about stress is that our bodies develop the stress response in order to survive. And it was developed to survive physical danger. So we've all heard of the fight or flight response. And the way our body's designed is whatever it perceives as a threat, adrenaline and cortisol hormones get released into our system. And then our body starts to have certain reactions. So all the blood goes to our limbs, our digestive system shuts down because that's not needed in that moment if we had to physically defend ourselves. Our immune system shuts down for the same reason. Higher levels of thought shut down, and your amygdala, the primitive part of your brain, which is reactionary, is what kicks in and takes over. Now, if we actually had to face a physical threat and fight it off or outrun it, once we reach safety, our body would reset through a process called allostasis. And all those hormones would have been burned off by the effort it took to survive the threat. And then we could go into this recovery state, which is regenerative. And we could repair injuries. We could go back to normal. We could begin to get healthy. Problem in the modern day, though, is we all know is most of the stresses that we face are not physical threats. So we are not running. We are not fighting. Therefore, we are not burning off those stress chemicals. And what's more is that the stresses we have are chronic all day, every day. So our bodies are getting absolutely flooded with these stress hormones. And all the things that they do to our body are being sustained. We're not getting that reset. And then what happens is we start to have longer term impacts. Inflammation develops in our body because of our weakened immune system and weakened digestive system. That ultimately leads over a longer term to diseases like diabetes, cancer, heart disease. So this is really bad for us, but it's also bad for our mental health because it causes anxiety, PTSD, other kinds of mental illness can get triggered by chronic stress as well. Even longer term, those stressors affect what are called our epigenetics, which are the gene expressions that get turned off and on. And that's why there can be things like generational trauma. So, all of this to say, I've done my homework and I know that stress, this is no bueno. We don't want this in our lives. So, great. What do we do about it? Well, we have to, unfortunately, think differently. We can't just keep doing what we're doing because how's that working out for you? You're still under stress, right? Something might work short term, but it really doesn't in the long term make that difference you want it to make. And when we think about how we would love to spend our time, we know that we have our why, our purpose, the thing that lights us up. That's something we want to give a lot of time and energy to. We know we have this idea of quality time, the time that we spend with our family or our friends or helping out in our community, things that matter to us. But somehow those things always take a back seat to the obligations that we have in our lives. And that is what creates a lot of the stress is our inability to have that priority. So obligations to family, like the million different things you may have to schlep your kids to, or helping someone who is sick, caretaking, that can be a lot. Work obligations. It's great to work on projects, and we all know that's part of life, but sometimes those can begin to feel really heavy. Or you may have people creating busy work for you, or just things that your work demands of you. That can be a lot of your time. And just life management, right? It is very hard to manage to remember to pay your bills every month, or remember that you needed to book a flight for a vacation, or that going to that soccer match out of town meant you needed hotel rooms, or you had to remember to get the oil changed on your car. And unfortunately, these things can feel like really big demands on our time. And I talk about this a lot more in my book, Time Builder. And we tend to give the things that would bring us joy, bring us fulfillment, are our purpose, take a back seat while we let these other things really take center stage and drain all our energy. So then we don't have time for the things that really matter to us. In studying the regrets of the dying, the biggest finding was people wish they'd enjoy life more. No one ever says on their deathbed, I wished I'd worked harder. There is no prize for the amount of hours that you work. So, what can you do about this? How do we reset this? So, if we look at how you might typically spend your day, and this comes from some examples with some of my clients, some things that we talked about. So, work obligations. Well, if you're working 10 hours a day, which a lot of people are, that might be about 42% of your day. Life management, right? Doing the things you need to do just to keep things running smoothly. That might be another 7 hours of the day. Family obligations, those could be another 5 hours of the day. And what does that leave you? Maybe 2 hours for quality time. Hopefully that's a family dinner where you're all together, or maybe you're going to an exercise class. And then your why, that got nothing, right? And this is pretty typical of what I see. And with just a few adjustments, though, we can really tip the scales on that in terms of how we spend our day. So it's the same 24 hours. There's not like you get more hours, but we're just going to be more strategic. So just spending 2 hours a day thinking about the things that light you up, that are your why, that are your purpose, can actually make a huge difference. Those small changes add up. They will set you on a whole new course. And you could find those 2 hours really easily. When we get into the 4 parts of the day, I'm going to show you how you can add simple things to your morning routine that might get you a half hour, what you can do during your commute, what you could do for just a portion of your workday, doesn't have to be the whole day, that start to make a difference and give you that 2 hours. We're going to talk about just adding a little bit more quality time by reducing some of these obligations. A lot of the people I work for, their kids are over-programmed, and we don't give kids a lot of autonomy and independence these days. So they are spending all of their time schlepping their kids to practices of various things, lessons, tutoring, all kinds of things. And oftentimes just sitting down and saying to your child, what do you really want to do? What's really exciting? Pick 2 or 3. You might find that some of the things that are the biggest drains on your time in terms of family obligations are things that just kind of got set by default. Maybe your kid wanted to play soccer 2 years ago and you keep signing them up, and now they're just kind of meh on it. They don't hate it, but they don't feel like it's that important either. So think about how you can ask those questions related to some of these obligations and get that a little bit better. With life management, you might actually want to spend a little bit more time, because that's going to make you feel less stressed out, because your home is in order, your life is in order, you're not forgetting things that you need to do. You've set up good routines for that. So you can see that the 2 pie charts are not radically different, but just those few little adjustments are what makes the difference between having a high-performing day where you have less stress and you're doing things that really matter to you more, and a day that just feels like you've been on the treadmill all day. And speaking of treadmills, a lot of us are just that hamster, right? Spinning, 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 trying to do it all. But in the process, we have split our energy. We have fragmented ourselves so much that we're just in a zone of competency, if that. We're doing what we need to do. We have no vision of the future. We're just slogging through. On the other hand, if you think about how you can get support, now the effort that you're putting gets multiplied. So be like a gear where you are connected to other people and where your effort is helping to spur their effort and their efforts are fueling your efforts. When we do this, we don't have to put as much energy into what we're doing. And this can happen a lot of different ways. It can be delegating, whether that is things at home. What could a partner do for you? What could your kids, if you have them, do for you? What could you hire out as a service? Or what could you say no to? No is not a dirty word. It is one of the best things you can say. If something doesn't feed your soul, if it isn't aligned with your purpose, then it's a distraction. and we want to minimize those things. So be really clear about your boundaries. Say no to things that aren't really critical. Ask yourself, who else could do this? And if you can answer that question with anybody else's name but your own, go find that person and delegate to them. We do not have to take responsibility for everybody and everything. We only have to worry about ourselves. And that can feel really selfish, I know. And we've been trained that self-care is selfish. But the truth is, the very best thing you can do is to take care of yourself and be excited and fulfilled. Because when you do that, you serve everybody in your life so much better. You have more energy, you have more patience, you're happier and more pleasant to be around. Essentially, you've given yourself more resources. There's that word again. And when we have more resources, we have more to give. And what we give is worth giving, right? If we think about our resources as a pitcher of water, don't you want the resources you pour out for others to be clean, clear water, not sludge that's toxic? When we deplete our resources, that's what we have left to give. So we aren't doing anyone any favors by working ourselves to exhaustion, by not having boundaries. And I often talk about this idea that many creative professions are systemically codependent, meaning we've been trained and it's been normalized for us that we have to work really hard, that we're never good enough, that we have to be perfectionists and people pleasers, that we have to be competitive, that we have to overperform. And none of that is actually true. None of that is going to get you real success. It might get you a little further ahead, inch by inch, but it is exhausting and stressful to try to operate that way. Instead, we want to really shift to a more high performance, high purpose way of being. When we do that, we're very, very clear on our purpose and our North Star. And to kind of get a little clarity right now, as part of this clinic, I want to coach you on reconnecting with that. So take a minute and think about why you majored in what you majored in, what your dreams were when you were in grade school or high school, how you envisioned what was possible for you. So, take a few deep breaths to kind of calm down, reconnect, and don't feel embarrassed about this or that what you might come up with was silly or a pipe dream. Give yourself permission to really reconnect with that. And then when you've come up with what that was, I want you to think about how it made you feel at the time. And just write down anything that comes to mind. Is it exhilarating? Is it fun? Is it exciting? Is it adventurous? Is it creative? Is it freedom? What are the words that come to mind? And after you've kind of let those words free flow, and don't judge what comes out, whatever it is what needed to be said. Look through those and circle the 3 that feel the most important. Because that's how you want to feel every day. And I want you to think about how your typical day goes and how often you feel any of those feelings. And if the answer is seldom to never, you really need to reconnect back to that clarity. So I have my fellowship in ACHA as well as the AIA, the American Institute of Architects. And on both applications, you have to have a one-page summary sheet and a 35-word statement about how you've made a difference. And it's really interesting when you look at your career and try to distill it into something that's succinct. However, what I realized after I created my statement is that statement would have been true about me when I was in high school. It was true when I was in college. It was true when I was in the early years of my career, just as it's true now. That was my purpose, my North Star. Now, it doesn't mean my career looks the same as it did 20 years ago. It doesn't mean I'm doing what I thought I would be doing. So I work in healthcare. And what's ironic about that is my dad was a doctor, and his biggest dream was that my sister or I would follow in his footsteps and take over his practice. And both of us were like, no, thank you, not interested. I went into architecture, and in my early career, I was doing commercial retail. And then I was working on institutional buildings like schools and even a forensic science center. And I happened to help out on one hospital project, then relocated and was in a job interview where the person interviewing looked at my portfolio and said, "Oh, you do healthcare." And I was taken aback by that because I would have never said that about myself. And I started working at that firm in their healthcare practice and never would have thought I'd ended up there. It was kind of a little bit of an irony that I was somehow back in the world of healthcare, even though I had not wanted to go there. But what was really interesting was that the things I really cared about as an architect, designing for well-being, how social and economic and environmental impacts can affect us, and how the built environment can play a role, those things mattered more in healthcare than in the kind of work I had been doing before. And so it was even more fulfilling. So where I am now has taken lots of swerves and turns. I even took some time off when my parents were sick and my daughter was really young, changed jobs because I relocated for family a few times. So it isn't that my career has been this beautiful straight line trending up, but my purpose has never changed. And that's what I really hope to communicate to you today, is getting that clarity. If you listen to my podcast, you'll hear many episodes where I reference back to that clarity, that North Star. And that is because that is what helps you discern how you spend your time. It's what guides you in making decisions, not doing things for validation, not doing things to people please, but really knowing what is important for you. That's how I want you to make decisions. So that's the high purpose part of it. When we go back to the high performance, that means that we set our day up for success, that all the micro distractions that happen to us get minimized. We work really hard to turn those off. So it's interesting how many of us multitask. However, studies on multitasking show that every single time you switch from one task to the other, because your brain has to kind of stop and adjust, you lose about 25% productivity. So in a day where you switch back and forth among 4 or 5 things, you lose most of your productivity. So we're going to talk about how to be a little bit better at having boundaries and structure to your day so that that doesn't happen. We're also going to talk about the importance of self-care during the day, taking the breaks you need, getting the rest you need. So a lot of people think when I say rest, they think, oh, it's just sleep. And yeah, I don't get enough of that either. Well, sleep is very, very important. But according to Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, there are 7 forms of rest. So physical rest, yes, taking a nap, getting a good night's sleep, but there's also emotional rest, spiritual rest, creative rest, social rest. These things matter too, that emotional and mental rest. So if you had a very, very high level meeting and you were nervous and it's over, but you can still feel all the adrenaline, go take a 10-minute walk. Give yourself that rest. If you're feeling stuck, don't try to push yourself through. Read something that inspires you. Look at things that excite you. Read an article about something that interests you, even if it doesn't feel related. Take a break, get the rest, and you'll be surprised at how much more you can do that is better quality in less time. We don't give ourselves the rest we need. Therefore, we don't work efficiently. And the micro distractions of the pinging email, the pinging texts and Teams notifications, the constant hubbub of the things around us, as well as the multitasking that we're doing, is eroding our productivity. Therefore, we feel exhausted at the end of the day, stressed out because we have had just an absolute assault on our nervous system all day long. And yet we don't really feel that we've done meaningful work. So let's move into it now. This whole idea of getting more out of the daily 24. So I talk about dividing your day into 4 sections. And I do that because it's really important to think about how our day gets spent based on how our body processes the energy, because it is different at different times of the day. What's really important about the morning is when you first wake up, your brain has been reset overnight. There's actually a hormone called glymph that launders your brain. It kind of washes through your brain while you're asleep. Dreaming is a way of your brain processing things. And you wake up usually with an elevated mood, as well as a brain that is calmer, clearer, right? Because we haven't started thinking. However, most of us make the mistake of picking up our phone before we even get out of bed. And we're checking emails, we're reading the news. That is the worst way to start your day, because you're going right into the very, very active brain, stressed out activities, and you haven't had any intention in your day. So you're starting your day off hectic and frazzled. What's more, a lot of us wake up with that kind of just-in-time thinking, and just-in-time might work for inventory in a warehouse or in retail. Just-in-time does not work so well in your day. So we really want our morning to be that time when we're open to possibilities. This is the time to energize, focus, and center. So the first thing you want to do is make time for mindfulness. if you get up just 15 minutes early, spend that time doing something mindful. So one thing I like to do, I have pre-recorded 10-minute meditations. That is the very first thing that I do because it is guiding me through setting my day up for positivity, for success, for expecting miracles, for being loving in my day. And loving matters because people pick up on that energy. It's what make them want to spend time with you or feel a little scared of you. So make that time for mindfulness. First thing, before you start thinking about everything you have to get done or chasing your kids around to get them out the door on time or battling the hectic commute, worrying about if you're late, looking at an email and then being nervous about what it said. Before any of that happens, make that time to set that positive intention. Next, do one thing that inspires you so you feel really good. If you've ever gone to a movie that makes you feel good, right? You walk out of that theater and you feel 10 feet tall, even though the movie is fictional and not even about you, but it just made you feel good. We can do that for ourselves every single day, and we don't have to watch a movie. Just listen to something that you like, maybe music that's high energy and makes you feel good, your favorite song. And it's okay, listen to the same one every day. That's all right. Listen to a podcast that you really like that is inspirational. Read a few chapters of a book, but just do something that inspires you so that you feel that powerful energy. In my work in design for well-being, I study something called salutogenesis, and one of its aspects is called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is believing you can. So this is where we really want to kind of tap into that part of well-being is doing something that inspires you. Next, move your body. So I like to say that we have 4 bodies. We have a physical body, but we also have a mental body, an emotional body, and a spiritual body. And they all connect and information flows both ways. So our spiritual body encompasses our beliefs. Our beliefs affect our thoughts, our mental body. Our thoughts affect our emotions, right? If we think thoughts that make us anxious, we feel anxious. If we feel thoughts that make us happy, we feel happy. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that feelings are called that for a reason because they feel in our body. And I'm sure you can connect, if you've been angry or anxious, you can definitely have a physical sensation from that. But what you may not know is that our emotions trigger hormones within our endocrine system. So there are hundreds of hormones. So if you feel good, dopamine and oxytocin and feel good emotions get set off in your body, and those have positive effect. If you feel anxious or afraid, those stress emotions that I talked about earlier, the cortisol and adrenaline, they get set off, and we already know how bad that is, right? So we want to set ourselves up, but then we want to move our body because when we stretch, when we move our body, we flush out toxic hormones. We let our body reset. We help our body to have more of the feel-good hormones in the system so that we, again, are better set up for a more positive day. We want to seek priorities, know what you're going to focus on. And even though, of course, many of us may have really good intentions to do something on a given morning and find that we never got to it at all. But if you start off saying this is a priority, you are much more likely to get it done. And you know what? When you get it done, you get more feel-good hormones because you feel a sense of accomplishment. Also, when you do that, all those little micro distractions tend to fall away because you haven't given them room. Ask, how can I? So our brain is a problem solver, and its primary purpose is to keep us safe. Our brain is not a fortune teller. It does not know anything except what it has historically recorded in the memory bank. So if you are saying, I have this problem, your brain goes through the files there and says, oh, here you go. Based on similar problems in the past, this is the answer. Well, sometimes that works, but sometimes that answer isn't really what we want to do, isn't really the right thing. Sometimes that answer is that we can't do it, that we shouldn't try, that last time that really didn't work out. So what we want to do is use our brain differently. And just like you would type into a search engine, if you type in things like, how do I deal with my angry boss? What are you going to get? A bunch of results about toxic workplace and angry bosses and hard conversations. But if you say, how can I positively direct a conversation? You're going to get different answers, right? Same thing with your brain. So start to ask yourself, especially in the morning, this is the best time to do it. How can I, and then state whatever it is you want to work on that day. You'll be surprised at how well it works. Then the last morning 6 is to think about how you can be in service. And it can be even a tiny gesture, but if you just ask yourself that. So did someone on your team work really hard and deliver a great result? Write them a thank you email or note. Is somebody seeming frantic and you could let them go ahead of you in line? That feels good. Could you compliment someone in your day? Is there an email that you could send out to somebody that is encouraging them? Can you see something that someone did on LinkedIn and congratulate them for it? Just look for ways you can be in service. So now we're going to move to the next part of the day, the midday 6. And this is sort of like where we want to build your momentum. We're still in the first half of the day, and now we want to advance goals. So now we're probably right in the thick of working. And what's important to do here to be high productive is to time block. Make time for what matters. If you are studying for a credentialing exam, put that in your calendar, even if it's 15 minutes or half an hour a day, and treat it with the same respect you would treat a meeting. Stop what you're doing when it's time to do that and work on it. By putting it in your calendar, by time blocking it, you prevent other things from happening, because we all know what it's like when we don't schedule something. Our day fills up with other people's priorities as they start to schedule our time. So time block the things that matter. Practice gratitude. I have a little reminder that goes off on my phone at noon every day and just says gratitude. And that is my cue to stop and to say, what am I grateful for? And even if you're like, nothing, today has been the day from hell. No, you have a job. You have a roof over your head, right? There's always something. You're lucky enough to have the internet so that you can do your work. Always something to be grateful for. And most of the time, we don't have to stretch that far to find things to be grateful for. We can start to notice more of the really wonderful things that are going on around us, whether it's the people we have on our team or opportunities that we're getting. But the more you feel thankful, the more you start to notice more things to be thankful for. And a little challenge to do at this point in your day is find somebody to thank and send them a note. Next one, place environmental anchors. So I'm also a certified feng shui practitioner, and feng shui is all about the art of placement. Some of it you might think is a little woo-woo because it has to do with energetic centers. But one part of feng shui that you cannot argue with is environmental anchors. So the things we see have meaning for us. Did someone give you that paperweight? Do you have a photo of a loved one on your desk? Is there a pile of clutter on your desk? Can you not find something? Is a light bulb burned out? Right? There's something. There's everything around us has some kind of meaning, whether it's a connection to a relationship we have or a reminder of something we need to do, or we had that water bottle with us in that last meeting where the client yelled. And so now when we look at the water bottle, we think about the critique that they had, right? There's always something. So what I want you to do is to be very conscious to put environmental anchors in your space that are positive. So it might be a plant, a photo, an object, piece of art, even a crystal in your line of sight. And that will help you to tune into positive things or even things related to goals that you have. Maybe if you have a goal that you are going to get a promotion and you have a visual that you associate with that. Maybe it's just a coffee mug with something inspirational written on it, but it's sitting on your desk. That's reinforcing that in your mind, which we said the mind is a big database. You're telling the database what you want it to be on the lookout for. And in this case, it's the ways you can reach your goals. It's more of that how can I thinking. Make time for movement. So we're back to movement again, right? Physical movement is really important. Don't sit too long. Get up and move at least 10 minutes every couple of hours. Even if you're just walking around in a circle, that's really important to help you stay fresh. Find a way to be vulnerable. So a lot of the stress in the modern world can happen when we lack psychological safety. What is psychological safety? That is how comfortable we feel being ourselves, being vulnerable, asking questions, admitting we don't know the answer, not being afraid of criticism. And it's really easy in a workplace where you don't want to feel stupid or look incompetent or feel like you can't do things on your own to not want to be vulnerable. But when we're vulnerable, we help people to connect with us much more. We form the connections and the trust that's going to let our whole team perform better. And what's even more magical about vulnerability is that you can model it for other people. So you help to create psychological safety for them too. The last part of the morning 6 in this like post late morning, midday is to embrace divergent and convergent thinking. So creative process relies on first collecting a lot, asking a lot of questions. That's the divergence, right? It's all coming in. Then we have to filter it and find the patterns and connect the dots. That's the convergence. So think about every day which phase you're in the moment. Be conscious about it and the value that it brings. So if you feel overwhelmed and like there's a lot of chaos, you're probably in a divergent phase. How can you manage that better? If you're feeling maybe a little constrained and like it's boring, you might be in the convergent stage and being too restrictive with it. So take some time to think about that. Now we'll move to the third part of our day, the post-noon 6. So this is when a lot of us tend to kind of get tired. We've had lunch, we're a little frazzled maybe, so we want to ground ourselves and try to stay productive. So what's important in this part of the day? We need to release binary thinking. And binary thinking it's yes or no. It's all or nothing. When we only think of things at two extremes, we can forget about the range of possibilities in the middle. So therefore, if we can't do what we thought we could do, then we aren't going to do anything at all because it was a total failure. On the other hand, if you say, what else could be a next step? You'll start to get more insights so you can keep momentum going and keep making progress. Take real breaks. How many of you are eating lunch at your desk or wolfing food down or eating fast food? Your health and well-being matters. And part of taking control of the structure of your day is to clearly communicate the non-negotiables about how you want to spend your time. And eating lunch is a non-negotiable. Nobody gets to take that away from you. If someone wants to meet over lunch, it better be a lunch meeting and there better be food there. It is not fair when people try to book your whole day or they see that there's a gap in your schedule over lunch and they think they can sneak a meeting in there. If you have to, I have done this, block out your lunch hour and just have it say not available and feel comfortable turning down requests on your time. Think about also when you need a break because you just completed something that was hard. Maybe you had to do a performance review for someone that wasn't doing so well. Or maybe you had a client meeting and the client was really hard on you. Whatever it was, give yourself some recovery time. Don't just jump into the next task at hand. Let yourself recover. Use one of those 7 forms of rest. Get a delegation squad. I talked earlier about saying, who else can do this, right? Know who on your team is good at certain things, who wants to develop a skill set in a certain thing, and give them that opportunity. When you try to do everything yourself, you not only make yourself incredibly stressed out, but you take the opportunity away from someone else for their own professional development. Remember to breathe. So breath work is a whole component that I offer in my Stressless Success class. We also do a breathwork piece in my Salutogenesis for Your Soul, which is a program I do for groups. Breath work is so important, and you can Google this, you can find different kinds of breath work, but the way that we breathe tells our body and our emotions, which we know are connected to our body as well as to our mind, how to set it. It's like changing the channel and resetting things, picking up a different wavelength. Most of us, when we're stressed, have very shallow breathing. We only breathe in the top part of our lungs. That makes our heart rate higher. And it just keeps perpetuating those stress cues in our body. So just changing your breathing can help to turn off that stress response and re-regulate your nervous system. And a really simple one is just having your exhales be longer than your inhales. That alone, that really simple technique will make a big difference. Number 5, find your joy magnet. So again, doing what we love is energizing. And we've all been there. We've all felt it, whether it was the first time we got to do something really exciting, go to a big party, go on a first date, right? What we love makes us excited. So give yourself that little treat. Instead of having a candy bar at 4 o'clock when you feel an energy lag, give yourself the treat of doing something you really love in that part of your day. That way you have something to look forward to in the hours before that. And it also helps to put the things you're doing before that in the context of the thing you really want to do. And when we looked at how to structure your day, right, the work commitments are still the bulk of your day. But when you got that little joy in there, it helps you feel a little more purposeful about the routine tasks that maybe aren't as exciting, and you don't get as lost in them because you have something to look forward to. And maybe you actually start to see how they can point more and more towards that, how you can put that different lens of your purpose on them. And the last thing that's important in this part of your day is to calendar your to-do list. And this might feel really silly, but if you just write a list of things, what you prioritize is going to be whatever's on fire in the moment. And there may be things, usually the things that you really love, that you decide aren't important because they're important to you and not other people. So they get put on the back burner and never happen. But if you calendar your to-do list, you have the time. It's right there on your calendar. So maybe you need to make a doctor's appointment. Schedule 10 minutes in your calendar. When the reminder goes off, you stop what you're doing, you call, you make the appointment, done. You had time. Maybe you needed to study for that credentialing exam. Put an hour in there. Great, done. Maybe you needed to work on reviewing drawings for QA, QC. You schedule that. Don't just try to make it happen in between your regular workday. So if you calendar your to-do list, what does that do for you? One, it guarantees you have the time available. So you'll never again say, I wanted to get to that and I just didn't. But the other thing it will do for you is preserve that time so it doesn't get hijacked by someone else's priorities. The last thing we're going to talk about is the late 6. So this is the end of your day. So for the late 6, what we really want to talk about is how to get settled, how to kind of get closure on your day and get some rest already so that you're not stressed out, so that you're not still in this anxious energy, this spinning energy, and then you get in bed and you can't even sleep. So what can we do to have a better late 6 experience? Well, first of all, celebrate the wins. So this could be a dinner time activity. Go around the table, ask everybody what the win was for them that day. What did they accomplish? Share it with a friend. Send an email to a friend or a text to a friend every day at the end of the day and say, what was your win? Share that, celebrate it. Eat well, just like you need to eat lunch, you need to eat dinner. And it's part of self-care. Eat things that are going to nourish you, make you healthy, not give you indigestion so you can't sleep at night. Say no to more things. Don't open yourself up to what I like to call crazy making from other people. Their priorities do not have to be your priorities, and you get to say no. So pare back some of the extracurricular activities. Most organizations that want you to volunteer, if you give them an inch, they take a mile because they know they got a live one. It's okay to volunteer your time, but be very clear about what you are and are not available to do. And if something just plain doesn't interest you, I don't care how badly they need help, you get to say no. So don't end up making cookies at 10 o'clock at night because your kid's school needed them. It's okay to send your kid to school without the cookies. It's all right. Be more discerning about stuff like that, because again, that's what creates the stress. These little naggers that in and of themselves don't feel like that big of a deal, but the cumulative effect of them adds up. Plus, there is that whole self-esteem issue that comes up when you're doing something that you resent because you didn't want to do it. Number 4, map out tomorrow. You don't want to lay in bed, and I know I've done this, going, oh my God, what a day. Now tomorrow, there's this. I got to call that person and I got to remember to send that email, because then you don't rest, right? If you map it out, then you can get those thoughts out of your head so you can relax. It's even handy to keep a notepad and a pen by your bed. So if one of those thoughts pops into your head while you're trying to relax and go to sleep, just write it down and then you can release it, because you know that you won't forget to do it the next day. Number 5, get closure. So a lot of times, the end of the day, we may not have gotten to everything we would have loved to have done. And procrastination leaves clues. So think about why you didn't get to it. Never because you're too busy, because we've already talked about all those strategies to make sure you get to the things that are your priorities. So why was this not a priority? Was it because you weren't interested in it? If that's the case, can you let it go? Can you turn it down? Can you reassign it? If you have to do it, how can you break it down into small chunks so you can just get it over with? Or oftentimes procrastination is coming out of fear of shining too bright or fear of failure. So take some time to get in touch with what was the real reason you didn't do that. And just simply being honest with yourself can help you then ask that how can I question the next morning, so that maybe you can get over some of those limits and take that on. And then the last part of getting more out of your daily 24 is to get great sleep. Sleep is critically important to being creative. Not only does it reset our brain, the fatigued brain has actually been shown to impair you more than being drunk. An exhausted, sleep-deprived driver is a bigger hazard on the road than a drunk driver, as crazy as that might seem. In addition, lack of sleep keeps that stress response fueled, keeps you hyper vigilant, and it becomes a vicious downward spiral for you, because you have brain fog then, and it's harder to do things, it's harder to focus. Your mood is affected. Your hormones are affected. So don't sabotage yourself this way. Prioritize your sleep. That is so, so, so important. So as we close out today, and I really want to thank all of you for being here and joining me, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about how you can work with me if you are interested in doing more things together. If what you heard today resonated with you and you're thinking, yeah, I think I might like to learn more about some of that stuff, or I might like to be able to get some help with some of this stuff because you were talking about it and it sounded good to me, but I'm a little overwhelmed, or I'm not sure how to do it, or I've tried to do something like that in the past and I didn't feel accountable. So there's lots of ways that you can get more out of this resource. There's my podcast. It is free. I release episodes usually once a week. They're on a whole range of topics, and there are hundreds in there. So you can search the podcast and get anything from stress and time management, so building more on what you heard today, to practical things like how to get a raise and a promotion, or how to have hard talks when something's not going right. Also have a lot of great interviews on the podcast with people who are making a difference in our industry, and you can learn from them. So that is one way that you can get more. Also, if you go to my website, architectingpodcast.com, right there on the front page, there are some free downloadable resources. There's one on flipping the script on your work, getting more what you want out of your job, how you can get more tactical on earning more and moving your career path along the trajectory you want it to go. There's one about finding your zone of genius, what you really like. There's also a fun quiz so that you could start to see where your roadblocks are. A lot of times we put the ceiling over our own heads, and this will help you get insight over what you might be doing. I also have 2 books. You can see them on the shelf behind me. Time Builder is the book that a lot of the content that we talked about today in this coaching clinic is based on. But I also have a book called Career Crisis that is more about finding that clarity. So if that was something that resonated with you, you can get both of those on Amazon. And then I also have some online classes. The doors are about to open on Stressless Success. That's my signature class. And it has 8 modules designed to be done over 8 weeks. We're going to be starting at the end of the month. And how that works is it is self-directed, so you don't have to worry about showing up live and whether you have time or not. You can listen to the material. There's a great workbook that comes with every week. There's also a meditation that you get that comes with every week. So that meditation is something you can do as part of your morning 6, right? To get yourself in the right headspace and really focus on the topic that is the topic of that week. And then there's also some great bonuses. One of them is called Wellness for the Working World. And I've done interviews with 7 different wellness experts, everything from sleep, how to get better sleep, to stress release, anger management, nutrition, hypnotherapy, lots of great things there. And that is also on demand. Listen to it. And then if you enroll in the class, we're going to do a few live Q&A sessions as well, just to support you as you go through. I also have some other courses that you can see if you go to the website that are a little bit shorter, if that sounds right to you. But really hope that you got a lot out of today's clinic. And if you did, please let me know. You can email me You can leave me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn at Architecting Podcast and let me know what you would like the next topic to be, because I'd be happy to make sure that I focus on things that are important to your quality of life so that you can have stressless success. All right, everyone, take care, and I will see you next time.